So this week, we're talking about Goodwill Hunting. We just watched it this weekend. I'm pretty sure most of us. It was actually Seth's first time watching it, but me and Jacob have seen it before.
Actually, no, it's been my first time as well. You're the only one who has seen
really?
it twice now.
Well, there we go. 1 point for me. So yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, why don't you wanted to break down the story a little bit?
Yeah, so Goodwill Hunting stars Matt Damon as Will Hunting. He is a past delinquent. He has been in and out, sort of going in and out of prison. Every time he gets out of prison and onto parole, he takes all these low-end jobs. Currently, at the beginning of the movie, he is working as the janitor for MIT, but he may just be one of the most brilliant minds of our lifetime. He is able to solve math equations that not even the high-end professors of MIT are able to figure out. He is an incredible genius on almost any subject, but yet he is this really troubled guy. Mm-hmm. So he's brought out of jail on two conditions. One, that he works with the math professors at MIT, and two, that he goes to see a therapist every week. And so, after going through multiple therapists, he finally ends up with one that may just work out for him. And that, of course, is Sean, played by the late Robin Williams. Mm-hmm. So, again, this is the week in which we work on reviewing a movie sort of in the past, and Goodwill Hunting is getting about to.
Yeah, it's pretty old, like 1997.
20 years now.
Yeah, it'll be about its 20th anniversary in 2018. So. Yep. Definitely, but still.
Yeah. So let's talk initial reaction. So I'll pick your brain first, Seth. What was your initial expectation coming into the film, and then what was your feeling coming out of it?
Well, honestly, when I started watching it, I had no idea what to expect. I mean, nobody had really told me about it. I'd never really heard about it. But after starting into it, I mean, you get hooked pretty quick. It was the first real good screenplay by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, and you couldn't tell. I mean, it hooked you. It kept me going throughout. I kept wanting to know what was happening, and it really focused on Will's story. It kind of followed that the whole time. The romantic interest, they didn't overwhelm. The interest between Sean and the professor from MIT, they didn't conflict too much. It really followed him well. It showed his development. It showed his flow throughout. And I think that was something you could definitely see through the movie, and I think that's what made it work.
Yeah. Did you cry?
Slightly teary-eyed.
Oh, we got him.
It was unexpected.
Oh man. So what were your thoughts?
I did not cry. I do not cry at movies, but I will say that I really liked this movie. I like it whenever a movie. I knew that going into this movie that it's been highly praised and definitely been recommended to me time and time again, but. I like it whenever a movie is able to change my perspective, and that's exactly what this movie did. At the beginning, I saw this character Will Hunting, and I just thought, oh my gosh, what the punk? Mm-hmm. This guy is just I couldn't connect with him. I couldn't empathize with him. I couldn't relate with him at all. Mm-hmm. But yet, as we were going through the course of the film, as Will Hunting was starting to develop and starting to one of his big flaws in his character being, of course, that he's unwilling to accept any sort of weakness. And he's unable to accept change, he's unable to accept risk. You're able to really see the depths of this character as brought out by, of course, the therapist. And I was able to really starting to change my perspective on him, and I think that's exactly how I think the narrative wants you to go through, is seeing Will Hunting as nothing more than this delinquent, and then later on start to realize more and more about his character, and then you start relating with him more. Yeah, and I think that's sort of one of the emotional cruxes of the film.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think one of the coolest parts about the film was it almost had like a Pulp Fiction vibe. That makes sense. I don't know if you guys seen that one yet either. Okay, but the dialogue's like very in some films the dialogue is very plot driven, and it's just as what you need to know for the plot, the dialogue is reflecting that. Well, with this one, the dialogue serves as like what the characters are kind of thinking individually, and they're more describing the characters in that moment. And so they could be talking about something as weird as like a joke around like a dinner table, but that joke isn't really talking about the joke. They're really talking about how there's this new girlfriend at the table, and she's starting to feel like she's a part of the family, and that's being told through this joke instead of being like, so I am feeling closed off, and now I'm being accepted. Like, it's actually like a more realistic,
It's more modern and very casual.
Yeah,
it's definitely ahead of its time, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I would still say ahead of its time. I don't think many movies are still able to get it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's a different style. I wouldn't say it's ahead of its time. I mean, there's other movies that's been like that, but it's probably more or less like we're probably used to seeing like the summer blockbusters right now, where it's just like, quick, grab the radar gun. The only thing that can take this down is this radar gun, and it's just or something radar gun. I don't know what that is, but like you get the point where it's the dialogue is just serving the exposition, and this one, the dialogue actually served as its like own character, and that's what I really like. One thing I really appreciated about it. I know you had like a couple moments where you're like, wow, that was a good camera move.
Yeah. In the film, when you watch it, they did really good with camera work, really good with color. One of the scenes where Will is in Sean's office, and they're talking about his problems, trying to get Will to open up. You see that it kind of takes the characters and it cuts them off on their own. So when you get shots of Will, it's just Will in the shot. When you get shots of Sean, it's just Sean in the shot. And as Will slowly begins to open up, begins to feel comfortable with Sean, you slowly get the shots kind of merging them together. And you even get like an over-the-shoulder shot where it takes it and it brings his head into the frame. And it's really good. I mean, it really kind of brings them together and shows that they're getting closer.
Yeah. I remember that scene. I remember like watching it and I was like, oh, there it goes. Yep. There it goes. And I got like super excited. I was like, coolness.
Exactly.
It was weird, but I definitely, that was a great, that was one thing that I respect about the movie. I can't remember who said it. Some cinematographer sometime, somewhere said, the best cinematography is the ones that you don't notice. And so I think the cinematography was really appropriate for this movie. That there was no point where it was just like necessarily like astounding movements, but like every movement had a purpose and a meaning and a greater meaning that served the narrative instead of just serving itself, you know? Sometimes you'll watch a movie and it'll be like, cool camera move, and you'll be like, didn't really serve any purpose to the story, it was just like, camera move, which is fine. But it's definitely like really cool when you get just to see, I don't know, I guess, just a cinematography that serves a narrative versus just itself, I guess.
Yeah, it had a good purpose. It was put there.
It was purposeful.
Yeah, I remember that before we started this movie, you actually were saying that you liked Goodwill Hunting, you liked the narrative, but you weren't so much into the cinematography.
Right.
Do you think your opinion on that's changed seeing it the second time around?
Yeah, I remember thinking about that on the way. I mean, I don't think it would be like, if I were to suggest like a movie for cinematography, it wouldn't be this film. But I think the cinematography was well done. I don't think this is a film that really lends itself to like fantastic cinematography, just because it's a story about a guy who was an orphan, and was abandoned and then abused and then trying to just get out of the pit, and so there's not much visual movement. There's not like that, you know, like there's only like one fight scene, like there's nothing that's like really like action worthy. It's more dialogue, and so. If you want to figure out how to shoot dialogue, it's a great movie for that visually. But like, if you want to figure out how to do like cool jib shots or tracking shots, you know, you go watch a movie like Lord of the Rings or Gladiator or I don't know, Patriot, something like that, and you'll be able to see some better camera moves for that kind of thing. So, that would be, I guess, my assessment of it.
But you wouldn't say that the cinematography was lacking.
No, absolutely not. I just don't think it'd be like.
It's not what you would go to this movie.
Right.
It was definitely well used. I mean, if you take to the fight scene, they used slow-mo just a little bit, but they used it in the perfect time. So, I mean, they had some slow-mo, a lot of slow-mo in that, but when they had back to real speed, it was when it was showing the brutality of the fighting. Yeah. So it really used it in a way that brought out the fact that this is messed up. This is not how life should be for Will. He should not be doing this. And I think that's where it really succeeded, in doing it well instead of doing it where it looks amazing.
That's a good way of saying it. I like that.
Yeah,
way.
talking about scenes with a strong point on the cinematography, but also a strong point to serve the characters as well, was probably one of, if not the most famous scene from this movie, which is the scene where Robin Williams and Matt Damon are sitting down together at the garden, and actually, in fact, that's what our backdrop is right now.
Yeah.
Is that same garden scene, and basically what happens in this scene, starting from the beginning, is Matt Damon, Will Hunting is, talking smack to Robin Williams, as he has been doing to almost every single one of his therapists, trying to push them out, trying to either embarrass him. He's talking like, oh, are these geese or these swans, are they like your fetish? Do you come here every week, seeking something? He's trying to embarrass Sean out of seeing him ever again. But then we get to the one shot, and this one shot probably is what gave Robin Williams his Oscar for the movie, which was this one long take. And I think I actually looked it over again. It was like maybe 3 or 4 minutes before you actually saw Matt Damon at the very end of the shot. And it's just him. And during this entire time, Sean is talking about he's finally reading into Will's character. He's finally able to start challenging him, finding the cracks in his character, seeing past the facade, seeing past the perspective that he is just this delinquent kid, as everybody else kind of expects him to be. That he isn't some hopeless character. He isn't some hopeless kid. He's just a flawed person like anyone else.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, you really start seeing that, and honestly, this one shot alone probably has more layers than I can even talk about. You can talk about the layer about where Will Hunting is starting to actually be challenged by this. This is probably the first time Will Hunting has actually gotten to shut up in the entire movie and started to have a silent moment for himself. And he starts off trying to challenge Sean, but by the end, he's the one who's being challenged. You can talk about this one shot from the perspective of just Sean himself. He's talking about him. Because the talk he has here talks almost about himself as well. He goes a little bit into his past with his late wife and how he's a widower and how, but it's not useless. It's not the risk he took was not in vain. The experience he had in living with his wife was completely worth it, and that's pretty much how he gets into Hunting's mind. You can talk about how this is getting them connected now. Now finally they start to connect with one another. Sean has been going through a life where he's taken a big risk, such as marriage, and that hasn't really played out as idealistically as possible. And you have Hunting's character, who is unwilling to take any risk in his life, and now finally starting to see things from a different perspective. Maybe this is the first time that maybe there can be something more to his life than just living in the back streets of his town, taking up whatever job, getting into fights, landing in jail, doing the same shtick over and over again every day of his life. And I think that for me was one of the best parts of the movie. I can almost talk about any scene in this movie just from a writing perspective, and I could go on and on about just how well written it is for any of these characters. These characters are fully realized. Yeah. Their characterization fits to the plot of the story, and they all develop exactly how they ought to in a logical way.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna talk about, you kind of hit on how like he's starting to open up and he's starting to bring out kind of the darker stuff of like what he dealt with in his past. And so I was just curious about like how relatable was the movie for you guys? Like even though this character was such an extreme character where he's a super genius who was an orphan who has no respect for anybody and doesn't really care. But were you able to empathize with him well and like draw back? Perhaps not.
You can somewhat understand. I mean, if you've had friends in that position, or even we all deal with issues where it's holding us back. It's silly. I mean, there's people out there that care for him, and he can't tell. I mean, it's kind of obvious to us watching. But we all deal with things like that where for other people it's silly, but for us, it's a real struggle to get over.
Yeah, and I said at the beginning of this review that I couldn't relate with Will Hunting at all. I thought he was just this punk delinquent. But by the end of it, I could actually empathize with him a little on the idea of that, you know, sometimes in life you just have to take a risk, and it doesn't matter if that risk pays off or not. It's the fact that you took the risk and that you did something with your life. That's what makes the risk worth it. It's the means and not the ends. And that's something that I can personally relate with myself. Anything?
Yeah. I don't know. For me, there was just a couple points in there where I was like, man, like I don't know, like where I just saw like him as me for a minute there, like just being underestimated or being cast to the side or something like that. You know, just I thought that they did a really good job of expressing those moments of humanity where you're not sure who you are and you're trying to figure out who you are, and in doing that you're just becoming something that you never really wanted to be, and then getting out of that. And that was just the most like that's really what the story is about, is becoming who you want to be instead of just becoming what you think you are. You know, and so I don't know. I really appreciated that.
And one thing I think that you talked about a little, and I just kind of want to expound upon, it could have been so easy to really mess up the character of Will Hunting. You were talking about how he is all these different extremes, how he is this orphan, he's gone through foster care, and he's been needed to be removed from each and every one of his foster care homes because he was under abuse from all those different places, and he is just this jerk, but you know he does have flaws, and it could have been so easy to just play it on the surface level and expect the same amount of reaction that this character should garner. I think the best way you could have screwed up this character is play him, and I guess in going from a TV tropes term, a jerk Sue, someone who you're expected to empathize with, but they completely shut out everybody else, but yet everyone loves them for whatever reason, but you cannot possibly understand why. But through this movie, you are able to understand why. You do get to acknowledge that yes, he is someone who is deeply flawed, but yet he is also someone who is deeply human, and someone who you ought to really. If you were to meet this person, you should put your time and investment in him. Because he is someone worth, saving. He is, as kind of the title talks about, he is someone good.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, well said. I think one of the coolest parts for me, at least, was like, okay, so like I think the climax of the film would probably be when he gets his therapist gets Will's his orphan files. I don't know what to call them.
Yeah, we're trying not to spoil the movie at all for anyone who's not seen it yet.
Right, but he and basically he's feeling like all of this blame and shame because of what happened, but it was not his fault. And so the therapist just goes up and just repeats to him, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. And like at first, it just feels super awkward. Like,
yeah,
like,
you
like,
think
like,
it's
like,
super cheesy.
Oh, yeah.
It's-
Right. Like even as you're sitting there, you're like almost like sitting there like, yeah, just like it's not your fault. It's like, yeah, it's not my fault. And then like you're just feeling that, and it's not your fault again. It's like, okay, like that's awkward. Just kind of like cut it out. And like it goes on for like a solid like 10 minutes. No, not 10 minutes, like 5 minutes maybe. And it's just like eventually Will just breaks,
and then you just break as well, and
Right,
everybody in the theater is
cries.
crying.
Yeah, but like that was like one of the coolest moments in that film was just like, I don't know, like that moment expressed how like sometimes there's just not words to fix it. You know what I mean? And you just need to know this. You know, it was a cool moment.
That is something I think is important to realize, is that Will doesn't develop out of his backstory. It's not the fact that he is an orphan, that he has been abused all of his life. Those are things you just can't fix. And I think that was the flaw of a lot of the former therapists that he went through early in the movie. They tried to, get back at into his backstory and really just try and fix those aspects of his life. But it's all those abuses and all the neglect, all have sort of just piled into one big problem that only Sean is able to realize, because he's been through very much the same and similar issues, similar trauma in his life of loss, and he's able to get at the fact that, okay, I can't fix your past, you can't fix your past, but we can see about your present and we can see about your future. And I think that's probably the biggest message, is that you can't fix the past, but yet you can make steps to improve your present, and you should take steps to improve your future. And I think there's one scene between Will and his best friend, who's played by Ben Affleck, where it talks about the same thing. And I don't want to even talk about that scene at all. It's probably my favorite scene of the entire film. But they talk a little bit upon that, and honestly, the dialogue in that one scene alone, I think, it's worth watching for that one scene, and it's worth watching for almost any one scene of this film.
So we're talking about it being worth watching. We're giving it a lot of praise, but what did they do wrong, or maybe what was excessive in this movie? Because there's one that really stands out.
So it is rated R, so now you know. But
Yes, it's hard R. It's not. It's
well, I mean, not.
It's not. It's
has
not
a lot of swearing.
It's not egregious, but it's hard R in regards to swearing.
Right, yeah. So the movie is written by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, and they have no credentials up to this point in their careers, and they read a script, and it's just like raw, and it's very human. I think some people might who watch it say I don't even know people who swear that much in dialogue.
Yeah.
And I can see where they're coming from, but I could also argue that comes from the people that you probably hang out with.
Yeah.
Because I've been in areas that in construction and landscaping where there's
I've seen some
just every
swearing
word.
sailors.
Yeah, we've all met them, and so it's very much that kind of character, and those kind of characters in this film are very rough characters, and so. I don't want to say you have to watch this movie, but it is a really good movie, and if you're able to get past that
if you're able to get
edgy
past,
part of it,
if you're able to get past the hard swearing in this film, and you're also able to get past, there are some suggestive scenes, no complete nudity or even partial nudity on Matt Damon's part, but in terms of if you can get past those and you're able to think of this as more okay. These things play into the plot of the story. They do play into the characters, and I think it plays well into the plot.
Yeah, it's definitely who they are.
Yes, it shows more about who they are.
Right. So yeah, that was kind of our.
Nope. There's one more thing
that
I want to talk about, and I'm not leaving this review until I talk about it.
All right.
Robin Williams acting in this film. This is the one Oscar he ever received for any type of acting role at all in any movie. What did you all think before I talk about it?
It's definitely different than what you're used to seeing him in. It was a real role. Like a lot of his are maybe goofy or more like fantasy or kind of happy. This was a real role. He was portraying like real raw emotion. He was just serious. It's a lot different. But
Yeah.
I think he deserved it, definitely.
Yeah, I would agree. His performance is like a very experienced character later along in his years who's just seen a thing or two. And I think he really portrays as the wise but yet optimistic fellow character. Yeah, so I mean, if you like Robin Williams, you like Matt Damon, you like Ben Affleck, you like good stories, this might be the movie for you. And with that, we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. Ciao.